Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Armpit Intellectuals. I'm your co-host, Zahra, and with me is Bilal.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're here to talk about the theory Psychopolitics by Byung-Chul Han. Now, we've picked Byung-Chul Han because, I don't know, it was an interesting topic to discuss, and I guess you could say
Quite relevant.
Quite relevant, yeah. He's a contemporary philosopher as well. And yeah, a relevant philosopher who has apparently, according to a New Yorker article, broken the internet. He's TikTok's favorite philosopher.
Oh, yeah, TikTok's favorite philosopher.
And a big part about that is that his material is pretty accessible. It's very digestible. His books, I guess, are short.
Right.
Short essays.
Yeah, to the point, yeah.
Yeah.
I heard him saying that whatever I write, I expect everyone to underline all of my lines.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I say in the book. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so who is he? Now, if you're wondering कि कौन है ये बंदा, क्यों हम इसके बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, we'll just start off with he is a South Korean born. क्या?
क्या माजरा है?
क्या माजरा है, exactly.
ये क्या माजरा है?
So basically, yeah, he's a South Korean born, Germany-based cultural theorist, philosopher, and former professor at the University of Arts Berlin. Han is influenced heavily by Foucault and Nietzsche from our readings of his work, as in what I've read so far and what, right? Like you
Right,
would
the
agree.
biopower, yeah, they kind of shadow each other.
Exactly.
Sort of, like he takes on the inspiration of biopower. I think we're going to talk more about it, but yeah, I think he kind of expands it into the social media aspect of it.
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. And yeah, so as you mentioned, biopower, and we'll get into that later. But just to kind of give everybody a backgrounder on his philosophy, his style of work, it is definitely influenced by Foucault and Nietzsche. And so, yeah, the book that we're focusing on today is Psychopolitics. He's written a bunch of other books. Another one that we read was The Burnout Society.
The Burnout Society, yeah.
And there are themes from that book that kind of are overlapping with his work in Psychopolitics, because I believe he wrote The Burnout Society first.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what is psychopolitics? In summary, it is the politicization
Right.
Politicization of the psyche by neoliberal capitalism. And it uses the psyche as a tool for politics and/or capital.
The big words used, I guess.
Pretty big, but I guess politicization of the psyche is, just using your psyche, your thoughts, your thought process, not even your thoughts, but not even your subconscious,
right?
Going further into your unconscious.
Yeah.
Right? This can be traced back to Freud's idea of unconscious thought desire, Lacan also. Like beyond the subconscious.
Beyond the subconscious, yeah.
So he says that psychopolitics is basically using the unconscious psyche as a tool for capitalistic political gain. Right,
yeah.
And one of his main ideas that he has repeated several times in our reading of Psychopolitics is Osho exploitation versus Allo exploitation. So if I'm explaining this correctly, Allo was prevalent before neoliberalism, in which exploitation was direct. So neoliberalism se pehle basically like Foucault's disciplinarian society, right? Let's say this was more relevant in the 80s. You could probably even relate this to Zia's regime. Right. We really looked into it. But basically, Allo can translate into this idea of you are not free and should just do what your higher ups or your government tell you, right? So you could see that in these dictatorships, like Zia's dictatorship, if we're speaking about it in a Pakistani context, for example, other kinds of, I don't know. Yeah, just anywhere between the 20s to the 80s, right? Was very much just do what you're told, put your head down.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's kind of...
Yeah, you can also relate it to the what happened in the Western democratic countries, where all this what we say neoliberalism, capitalism was kind of entrenched, and what the government was telling the people was to basically go out and work for these capitalist companies so that they are sort of running the engine of the country, not understanding why they're doing certain stuff. So I think,
So is this coming under Allo exploitation, you're saying?
yeah, because you mentioned Pakistan, and I was just wondering maybe it also in liberal countries, Western liberal countries, this was more kind of not in terms of how they were, because they didn't have dictatorship, right? So they were
They had
exploiting.
some fascism going on. I mean, what about Germany, right?
Yeah, they did, but I'm just saying that even after that, how they could exploit was to make sure that everyone was doing exactly as they were told, as cogs in the machine, sort of kind of thing.
So you're saying that throughout the Western world, in this sort of era of Allo exploitation, do what you're told,
What you're told,
it was kind of just the theme. I know I'm just using Pakistan example
Mhm.
because my brain just kind of
gravitates
towards that
Yeah.
example. But yeah, no, of course, this was a pretty universal
Yeah.
sort of, and it was focused on production. Whereas, yeah, if I'm referring to Zia's regime in Pakistan, that would be focused more on not so much production as much as it was kind of this idea of religious nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right in that I agree that in the Western world, it was always focused on production, profit, capital, right?
Capital, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's kind of Allo exploitation, and then auto exploitation, which is dominant under the current neoliberal. And you said the pehle bhi, it was more of a Western societal thing. So this one is also perhaps a more of a Western concept, but this auto exploitation, which is dominant under the current neoliberal regime, is much stronger and harder to overcome. That's what Byung-Chul Han is theorizing essentially. So instead of thinking, or instead of being told you are not free and should just do what your government or higher ups tell you, now we're at a point in the West where people believe themselves free. However, while at the same time, they are exploiting the hell out of themselves.
Right.
And Han refers to this as being both master and slave in the current capitalist and neoliberal state.
Right. So I think you can also see this in how basically now the society is sort of set up for people, and they always ask you to do more and do something that they basically are narrating this idea that you can be anything. So then there also comes the reference of becoming an entrepreneur and the entrepreneurship in this light. So becoming an entrepreneur is essentially being sold the idea that you can do anything you want, but doing anything you want under capitalism usually refers to an excess of production. So हम ये कह सकते हैं कि वेस्ट ने एक तरीके से लाइक एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप को काफ़ी लाइक एक पिनिकल ऑफ सक्सेस बना दिया, and then you just become an entrepreneur just for the sake of entrepreneur. You don't see that if whatever you're producing even has any use. So that brings us to excess of production. Now we are being fed lies in order to automatically exploit ourselves in order to increase capitalist profits and gains. So basically, yeah, so as soon as you become an entrepreneur, you're kind of increasing basically the capital, the GDP of a country, and that is just equivalent to profits and gains, and how those money or that under that profit in your balance sheet sort of helps the capitalistic sort of ideas and their goals itself. And Han also explains that while we are told that this true freedom by neoliberalism, this is in fact the opposite. We are simply enslaving ourselves under the dictatorship of capital. In dictatorship of capital is in quotes. So Han also says that true freedom looks like a fruitful relationship, but now under the neoliberal regime, especially in Western societies, we are isolated. I can also Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I do agree that in Western societies, there is more of a sense of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also comes under this idea of individualistic societies versus
Mm-hmm.
collectivist societies.
Right.
And in South Asia, for example, this looks different. And if I consider Pakistan as an example, since I guess I spent about 95% of my time thinking about Pakistan as an example,
Right.
it has not yet fully converted into a capitalist society,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas many Western countries are now experiencing you could say, a hyper or post-capitalist
Mm-hmm.
stage. It's hyper-capitalist, right?
Mm.
Everything is about cost of living is getting so high, and
Right.
it's just a housing crisis. All these things, right?
Mm.
It's just hyper-capitalistic, and
Right.
people are just trying to work as many hours, make as much money as
Money as
possible to
possible.
maintain a livable quality of life. And Pakistan is still entrenched in feudalism, or you could say it's a kind of like a hybrid model of feudo-capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
which where it has its one foot firmly planted in feudalism in the past, or some would argue कि पाकिस्तान की काफी society अभी तक medieval भी है.
Medieval, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also an overdeveloped military state, which is what Hamza Alvi had said in the 80s. So it's still, and we've referenced him before in our videos as well. He's a very academically well-known Pakistani sociologist who came up with this theory of the overdeveloped state, and he refers to Pakistan's state as being overdeveloped in terms of its military. And if you want to know more information about this, listen to our episode 2,
Right.
which focuses on the military economy in Pakistan. But anyway, moving on from that. So, because of this overdeveloped military state, Pakistan still functions based on characteristics of Foucault's disciplinary society rather than the achievement society, since opportunities for social mobility remain largely limited. So, you were saying this concept of entrepreneurship, right? That concept, I don't see it being as prevalent in a society, Pakistan,
Right.
for example, which is still entrenched in feudalism, जहाँ सिफारिश
Guilty.
चलती है, जहाँ there are all these just kind of things in place, classism, right?
Right.
Even patriarchy, right? Patriarchy will definitely inhibit social mobility.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that because of that, right, I neoliberalism, global neoliberalism affects all of the global south, of
Yeah.
course. Climate crisis ko dekho, right? Like the most climate vulnerable places in the world are all in the global south, Pakistan
Right.
being one of them, India being one of them, Bangladesh definitely being one of them, right? Indonesia is really
Indonesia.
feeling it right now. It's very rough for them. And how much do they contribute to the global emissions? Under 2% or something, right?
Right.
Like I think it's like 0.02%. I don't quote me on that. But it's very low.
Right.
And the rich global north countries, Canada is a great example, are definitely far more responsible for these emissions, for the fossil fuels, for this contribution to the climate crisis.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of referencing South Asia in this. I get his concepts of not allo exploitation, but entrepreneurship. How
But I would just say that even though not Pakistan, as you mentioned, that these concepts does apply, they kind of cascade into South Asia or South, the global South, as we say it. So even if you look at not Pakistan, but India or Bangladesh,
who
India,
have far more prosperous economies, right? Than
yeah, or
Pakistan.
prosperous, or you can also say that they've matured enough that they are now at a level where they can say that they have developed this capitalistic kind of norms, and people are kind of do have some sort of a mirror image of an American dream in their mind. They will have this something that they can start a startup which would kind of help them be a big company, and they can list in S&P 500 or something like
Who was
that.
that guy? There was this guy from Bangladesh who was giving out these microloans to.
Oh yeah, Muhammad Yusuf. Yeah.
Yes, Muhammad Yusuf. So do you
But
think
that
that is
was,
yeah?
I don't think if that's what, so that's the thing. If we try to unpack what he's trying to say regarding capitalism and entrepreneurship, I think that that was a good thing in terms that because the small loans were only going to women. But at the same time, the person Muhammad Yusuf also got some sort of award, Nobel Award for it or something.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that even though that he might have had this sort of, again, this is all, I'm just saying this is all predictions, and what if you want to apply this kind of this theory to Muhammad Yusuf, I would say that that kind of falls because he was also, it also had a societal impact to it. But on very kind of, on a very subconscious level, as you mentioned, I think Muhammad Yusuf would have also been working on this entrepreneurial culture and this capitalistic model of achieving and like
You
that
can do anything
you can
you
do
want.
anything that you want.
Yeah. No,
So
for sure.
yeah.
And I think also this shift, right, from disciplinary society, which was Foucault's theory, right, to this achievement society,
Right.
right? And also the original idea of the Panopticon. So for those who aren't familiar with Michel Foucault's work and his theory on the Panopticon, if you're familiar with 1984 by George Orwell, I think that the idea of Big Brother, right? So Panopticon is essentially this all-seeing, overseeing, being surveilled in schools, workplaces, other formal institutions. And this Foucault had kind of coined in the 80s, I believe, or the 70s. I can't remember, but it was around that time. And it definitely was trying to relay this idea of how we're all watched. And I guess exam there होते थे कोई teacher
Yeah, surveil karna.
surveil कर रहा है. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of that, but imagine that that's society, right? Doing that to you.
Right.
And now you can see कि वो थोड़ा भर गया है in the sense कि security cameras हर कोने पे होते हैं every time any street corner, at least
I
यहाँ
mean,
तो, right?
NSA is looking at us through the phone.
Right, that's true, exactly. Phone से पता नहीं क्या webcam से all these things. And yeah, so it's just that kind of surveillance society, right? And surveillance, उसमें surveillance capitalism भी आ जाता है, which is profiting off of surveillance, right?
Right.
But yeah, so this idea of the panopticon and the current age of what Byung-Chul Han refers to as the digital panopticon, which essentially he means that we are being watched and deduced. So watched, deduced, analyzed, quantified through social media. And not only that, though, not only that, but he also says that we are the ones automatically surveilling ourselves and others. And that's his theory of spectator democracy.
Okay.
And don't you feel like that you've been a part of that when you're on Instagram, for example, and like
Right.
something is going on, किसी की life में or something, and you're just kind of being a spectator
Yeah.
to that thing that's happening, or you post a story and all these people are looking at it, and it's just this, yes, it's a way of surveilling each other, right? It's a way of
Yeah, the likes and the comments kind of either put something ahead, or they have the power to like either just cancel someone through their likes or dislikes, or just take them and make them like an internet sensation all over overnight, right? Is that
exactly.
what you're trying to say? Yeah.
I mean, kind of. Yeah, I think that this idea of spectator democracy is kind of based on that. If the people like something, then they'll like it. If they don't like something, I think it's made very obvious and on social media, and also just the way that people's self-esteem relies so heavily on this spectatorship, right? More likes you get. It's just, yeah, and I understand why he refers to it as a democracy, because it is us, right, making these choices. Yeah, okay, like exactly, internet pe viral kaun ja raha hai,
Right.
like, it's exactly like that. And under this achievement society, to go back to achievement society, right, the achievement subject is self-punishing. So I guess that also falls under what I was saying about self-esteem relying on social media likes as an example.
Right.
But the achievement subject is self-punishing when he cannot achieve as much as the other, which leads to burnout, depression, and so on. So again, in a society that's telling us कि तुम entrepreneur बन सकते हो, तुम कुछ भी कर सकते हो, you can do it all. You can do it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like when you realize that you actually can't do it all, when you're trying so hard to keep up, and you're seeing other people on social media, which is a fantasy. It doesn't show you the full
Full
picture.
picture of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you're seeing these people and you're just kind of berating yourself because you're ये लोग सब कुछ कर रहे हैं, ये लोग
Yeah.
मैं क्यों नहीं कर सकती हूँ?
इनके
Like,
पास, we don't know about the privilege they had. किस तरह वो लोग उधर पहुंचे हैं.
exactly.
Yeah.
Privilege, all these other factors, because this idea of you can do it all, meritocracy is a lie, right?
Meritocracy
And
is a lie. Yeah.
again, if we look at Pakistan, for example, it's definitely a lie there. But even here, Chalti, like, you know, a lot of things run on Sifarish.
Sifarish or who. Yeah.
Getting a job here even. I've seen so many people be able to get better jobs because they knew someone कुछ reference था, इस तरह की
Reference के
चीजें.
through, yeah.
Yeah, so and this depression and we need to realize that the burnout crisis and the burnout economy, right, especially in the West, but not even, right, if you look in global South, जो especially जो working class लोग हैं, right, जो rural लोग हैं, जो लोग like, you know, फैक्ट्रियों में काम करते हैं, like ये globalized brands के लिए, fashion brands or whatever. A great example is जो बांग्लादेश में हुआ था Rana Plaza fire, right? Yeah, you're literally exploiting people. That's definitely more a form of the disciplinarian society. So that's how I feel like neoliberalism kind of bleeds into the global South, but the global South societies itself haven't fully converted.
Converted to it, yeah.
But anyway, we just need to realize that this burnout crisis is the result of collective suffering, right? We're all kind of suffering at the end of the day. And it's not about individual inadequacies or lacking, right? You said some people will have different levels of privilege.
Correct, yeah.
And burnout and depression are psychic maladies that are inevitable in the current times within a society that tells you can do anything you want, right? In order to increase capital, that's all it cares about.
Exactly, yeah. And they don't actually listen to what exactly your problems are. Even if you try to tell someone, they can always go. They'll always have people like Tony Robbins and who are pushing you to get some sort of achieve a utopic goal. And so this theoretical approach, as you mentioned, may be limited when it comes to South Asia. As you mentioned, India has a larger middle class than Pakistan and Bangladesh, who has economically superseded Pakistan. Factors such as class, caste, gender, religious and ethnic identities make it difficult to embody this idea of doing anything you want and entrepreneurship. And yeah, I think that this idea of entrepreneurship doesn't really apply to Pakistan, but it does apply to India. And we can say that although not all of the ideas apply to the South Asia, but I think that certain ideas about how people are being surveilled in social media, and that's huge in big cities like Karachi, Islamabad, Lahore. People are using TikTok, Instagram to sort of create trends, drop trends. If you
Even
see
in more rural
even in-
communities, right?
exactly,
Like
yeah,
in gaons, you would say,
Yeah.
there are people, there's this guy, Arshad Real.
yeah,
Made these amazing videos, and
videos, yeah,
a lot of the country, majority of the country, right, can relate to someone Arshad Real
yeah, that's true.
than someone, I don't know, some celebrity, but anyway.
Yeah, so yeah, that's something that's sort of good for someone like Arshad. But again, that's what that kind of society wants to sort of promote. I would say, like in Pakistan, there wouldn't be anything educational that'll get a lot of hits, or it'll get so common and so widely spread amongst the people that they can have this, like they can show that their society is more of a academic society, but that's not true. That's not what's happening. The things that are getting liked or shared more are just ऐसी, मतलब कोई खास चीज़ें तो नहीं है मेरे ख्याल में, वो कोई ऐसी इट्स गुड देख वो दिखा रहा है अपनी ज़िंदगी, पर उसमें कुछ इस तरह लोगों का कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है, उसका फ़ायदा है.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Han also argues that we are now volunteering information to big data by oversharing and overexposing our thoughts, preferences, lives, and so on online. So yeah, this now has led to big data being able to not only predict our conscious thoughts and desires, but our unconscious ones as well. It is becoming possible for big data to predict human behavior, which is making the future controllable and calculable. So we can see this. You kind of talk about something. I was yesterday, if I'm talking to My friend that I wish I had a Ferrari. Next day I might just see an ad of Ferrari on Instagram. That's a very long shot, but you do see that the internet is collecting data and data to such a big extent that they are now able to, even in the future, as people say, that Amazon is going to send stuff by itself to you because it predicted what you wanted, not
What?
yeah, exactly that.
No.
Yeah, that's what people are
That
thinking, that
crazy.
it's you were in such a condition that at the end, maybe when it sends it and you go, oh yeah, I do need these things. So then you end up just like keeping, so let's say Amazon sends some samples to you to check out what you want to keep, and then you go, oh yeah, actually I wanted this stuff.
Wow.
But that was just big data using your unconscious or subconscious to make predictions and decisions about you.
Interesting. So
So
yeah, controllable and calculable, right?
exactly, yeah.
Wow. And I think that it's also this transparency of our personal lives, right? Through kind of what big data is gathering, right? You said. I think that us also oversharing, overexposing ourselves, right? You were saying as well. It's kind of a transparency, right?
Right.
And it's a transparency of our personal lives and thoughts, desires, etc., whatever. And Han basically says that it is this transparency, right? Us oversharing social media पे जो लोग पता नहीं अपने कहानियाँ share करते हैं. I mean, I've done it too, right? I'm not saying कि मैंने नहीं किया. Obviously, मैंने किया. And I think a lot of people do that, right? It's just like sharing personal stories, personal struggles, whatever it may be. And of course, in the past, I've also thought, oh, I'm doing something good. तो मेरे लिए catharsis है.
Right.
और शायद दूसरे लोगों के लिए भी होंगी because it's kind of like maybe I'm being relatable to them,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And of course, it's an innocent thought. It's a more pure intentional thought. But Johan कहता है is basically this oversharing and being complicit and complacent in this. And this is what big data wants you to do on social media,
On
right?
social media, yeah.
Because it actually leads to this mass conformity and no space for deviance because you're doing what it wants you to do. You're thinking, ke, actually, I'm being different because I'm sharing my own story of struggle, right?
exactly,
And it's no, actually, you're doing this is a form of mass conformity
conformity. Yeah.
because you're doing exactly what it wants you to do. You're doing what it's designed to do for it to pick up as much information on your subjectivity and your unconscious desires and all of that, thoughts, whatever, to quantify you.
Right.
And that's essentially what Han is saying. Another thing that Han mentions that is pretty interesting, also kind of tying in with this idea of big data extracting information from social media, is our psyche relating to the instrument that is used for social media. So Han refers to the smartphone as the contemporary prayer beads, so rosary, tasbih. And he also calls the like button the new amen.
Amen.
And to quote Han, he says, could it be capital is the new God, making us guilty and debt-ridden again? Thus, I think that Han is trying to theorize that capitalism is the new religion.
Yeah, very powerful, and it kind of touches very closely to his earlier influences, as we mentioned, Nietzsche and Foucault. And while Foucault's biopower, which means the way bodies are governed and surveilled by the state, focused mainly on the physical reproduction, birth rates, birth and death rates, etc. Byung-Chul Han argues that under neoliberal power, the psyche is now being auto-governed and it's being surveilled. Han says that the power is least noticeable. The most quiet is the most powerful power of them all. So I guess something that's hidden and something that's the quietest is the most powerful of them all. An example of this quite soft power is the way big data is collecting our information through our self-affirming actions, posting things for likes and thus exposing ourselves online.
Wow. So, yeah, essentially, power that moves behind the scenes
Behind the scenes, exactly.
is the most powerful power
Powerful power.
of them all. Yeah, and another thing he said that I found interesting that kind of ties into this idea of quiet power, quiet soft power, is he says, page 35 of Psychopolitics, Han says, when people are still paralyzed and traumatized by disaster, they can become the objects of neoliberal conditioning. So to expand on this, he says this in the essay is called Shock, and it's referring to Naomi Klein's shock doctrine. So Naomi Klein is a pretty well-known, I guess, academic and writer, and especially in Canada because she's Canadian. So basically what he's referring to here, so the shock doctrine was about this, I'm not going to get into it right now. Just Google it if you're curious. But what he means by this is that people who are in shock, people who are fleeing war-torn countries, for example, they're more susceptible to neoliberal violence. And basically, he's saying neoliberalism takes advantage of those who are traumatized. So if you're in shock, if you're desperate, if you're hopeless, and if someone comes to you and says, you can do anything you want,
Right.
you're gonna want to try, right?
that,
You're really
yeah.
gonna want to try, right? So it's kind of like you're taking advantage of the most vulnerable in society. This is what neoliberalism is doing. And I think another example of this could also be the way the exploitative nature of, you were mentioning earlier, Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah, exactly. The self-help books, they have this exploitative nature sort of thing. You read these books and they have these steps, 7 steps to do something, 12 things to do to make better your life, whatever, 12 ways of living your life. That was also
7
by
habits of highly successful people.
yeah, exactly. So, and I've read the 12 Rules of Life, by the way,
Mm.
by Jordan Peterson. I don't recommend that, but anyway, so
Wow.
these things do
I'm judging
exploit
you
us for
now.
constant self-optimization. That is, we are tricked into doing as much as we can, the best we can, that we can do it all, which will inevitably lead to burnout and self-punishment once we realize we cannot do it all. Motivation has become a tool for increasing capital. In the West, this looks like a manager who tries to be your friend and motivates you to work harder, work the extra hours, etc., under the disguise of friendliness. Yeah, that's Mike in The Office that we see, which is
Michael Scott?
Michael Scott. Yeah. So you see that culture, right? He tries to be a family. He plays that everything is done in a family, and like you see that overall, people in companies, you see that they're trying to create this family.
Yeah, we're a family.
We're a
Yeah,
family,
we
yeah.
do. Yeah, this is a family. We're going to work together as a team. We've got your back.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Whereas I have applied to 300 more families this week.
please, someone new adopt me.
Yeah. So this body has been our body has been aestheticized under neoliberalism as well.
Okay, so body
Um,
as well, huh?
Yeah, so
Right.
body, just how our minds are, our bodies are, gym bodies and cosmetic surgeries are being used as tools to define what success looks on the outside.
Right, because if you're more ripped or if you have lip fillers,
Exactly.
you are more
Attractive.
Instagram worthy,
Instagram
influencer worthy,
Influencer worthy. Yep.
and you're just automatically viewed as someone who could be more successful or
Yep.
desirable.
Exactly.
Wow.
There's this alpha male thing also. Pretty, I don't know that.
Well, yeah, for women as
that-
well, right?
yeah.
The more you resemble a pornographic model,
Yeah.
the more desirable
Desirable you get.
you are. Yeah.
But this success is only recognizable under the automatically exploitative self under neoliberal capitalism. So this is there's another crucial point Han makes, is that this excess positivity, again, you see this, like on Instagram as well, you see these remnants, not remnants, but you see this play out. No, not in play out.
Yeah.
Remnants, I'm saying, because I don't use Instagram anymore.
Ajay,
So like,
the past.
the past, exactly.
Yeah, your past, the ghost that
The
haunts you, the ghost of Instagram.
Exactly. So he also says that there's too much positivity in the world now,
Mhm.
which is leading to a burnout society. Previously, we mentioned
Right.
the burnout society
Mhm.
and his earlier book. Can is limitless, thus inherently and excessively positive. For example, I can do this. I can do it all. I can be a girl boss, as you mentioned, and and a mother, and a CEO, and a painter, and a podcaster, etc. You can just keep on adding. I can be an artist.
और जो लोग अपने bios में डालते हैं
Yeah.
like CEO or I don't know, just polymath, polyglot, or not even it's more basic than that. It's just artist, editor,
So yeah, video
I don't know,
editor,
DJ, filmmaker, yeah,
storyteller.
YouTuber.
Yeah. So this is what that again all these things brings burnout.
Yeah,
If
it's
you
not
don't, you're not
sustainable,
gonna
right?
exactly you're not gonna be a success at everything.
Mm,
Let's just put it that way.
for sure.
So it's not sustainable versus a should. You should use a should, which has its clear limitations and structures.
Right. You should do this. And it's like, but nah, it's okay. I
Maybe
don't need
not,
to.
yeah.
I don't want to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of you can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Play it easy on yourself.
Right. Yeah. Take it easy. Take it easy. You don't need to do everything. It's okay. And it's interesting too how you were mentioning girl boss mother, right? This is also a way that neoliberalism kind of, I guess, just exploits women as well.
Right.
Because now in this Western, obviously, again, if I use Pakistan example, women get their medical degrees and then just shadi karte hain. That's why there's such a lack of medical labor force in that industry or that, I guess, sector in Pakistan. Which is interesting because yahan to you see people are becoming mothers and they're directors, CEOs of major MNCs and stuff like that. And yeah, they have to get help. Their child ends up being neglected in many cases. So it's just, you just can't do it all. And it's unfair that, and that's an example. But then, of course, there's another example of women who have children and have to work minimum wage jobs or multiple jobs, working 60 hours a week just to feed their children. And it's different levels of privilege because the woman who is obviously a CEO can afford to hire help and nanny, whatever. And obviously the child ends up being neglected in many cases, but it's very different than a working class woman. And that really ends up exploiting the working class people's labor, right? So just this idea of can is extremely exploitative, and there aren't enough societal supports in place for people either to help them. I really appreciate this idea of universal basic income in the West, at least. People can disagree with me. I don't care. But they call these G7 countries welfare states or whatever, right? But that's welfare here is crap. It's very not good. And there's such a big stigma to social assistance, right? So I just think universal basic income to provide people with a decent living, right? Anyway. So I think what I really appreciated from Han in conclusion, he speaks of the importance of writing, which I really think is beautiful because, writing is a very self-reflective art. Solitude and fruitful relationships. And these lead to more self-reflection, right? And thus less auto-exploitation. So he theorizes कि अगर तुम थोड़ा ज़्यादा self-reflect करते हो, तो then you're less likely to automatically exploit yourself. You're less likely to fall into the traps of this auto-exploitation. You're more likely to be hyper-aware, almost self-aware, right, of what you're doing. And he says that boredom is good. We are now so hyper-attentive, right? Plastered to our phone screens that there's no longer enough time for deep contemplation. And he also speaks of disallowing yourself to from labeling or categorizing, reducing people, right? To give into psychologization. And I guess an example of this is personality tests, which do end up deducing ourselves.
Other persons, yeah.
I could even argue that astrology, as somebody who was interested in astrology more in my younger years. It was also a way, we think it's a way of understanding ourselves and each other, but it's actually, you're actually categorizing each other, right? And personality tests do that too, right? Like Myers-Briggs. You're just kind of putting ourselves into boxes. You're not letting us be these fluid, unpredictable creatures that we are.
Yeah.
And I think also just from my kind of deduction of Han's theories is that removing oneself from the digital panopticon appears to have its benefits. So kind of moving away from social media, even taking a break, observing yourself around social media. What am I
there for?
Yeah, what am I there for? Am I just a spectator? Am I just freely giving away my innermost unconscious thoughts to big data? And I really also appreciated this quote that Han put in his book from Deleuze, Giles and Luz.
Yeah.
Deleuze. And Deleuze was a psychoanalyst or a philosopher? Deleuze.
We're just, you're not gonna butcher his name over.
No, let's not. Sorry. My French is weak, so sorry, Giles Deleuze. Deleuze. But yes, to end this episode, the quote was, "What a relief to have nothing to say, the right to say nothing, because only then is there a chance of framing the rare, and even rarer, thing that might be worth saying." Thank you very much.